Masugu was particularly on edge that morning as he overheard some of his female colleagues talking in hushed tones about a possible romance brewing within the office. Shizuno, one of his charismatic seniors in the accounting department, approaches him with her usual playful demeanor and nudges him, asking his opinion on the topic. He responded carefully, expressing that he didn't think romance between coworkers was a good idea. Before the conversation could continue, Maria, their no-nonsense junior, made her presence known. She reminded everyone that they should be focusing on their work, clearly irritated by the ongoing chatter. Shizuno got the hint, quickly dismissing the conversation of their other office mates and telling them to return to their desks. The morning didn't improve when Yui stormed into the room, visibly annoyed. She confronted Masugu about a receipt he had submitted, claiming he was supposed to handle it. Masugu counters her accusation, stating that it wasn't part of his responsibilities and that she should deal with her own tasks. Frustrated, Yui snatches the receipt back and huffs at his refusal to help. She insults him one more time before storming off the office. Their colleagues exchange glances, wondering why the two always seem to be at odds despite joining the company at the same time. After the workday ended, the atmosphere shifted entirely. Yui greeted Masugu warmly when he arrived home, apologizing for her earlier behavior. Masugu felt relieved, having half expected their earlier spat to escalate into something worse. Yui admitted that she panicked earlier and didn't know how to act around him while maintaining their charade at work. As Masugu washed his hands, he reflected on the difficulty of keeping their relationship hidden. Their constant coldness toward each other in the office was exhausting, and he wished they could be more open about their feelings. He handed Yui a bottle of beer and cautiously suggested that they reveal their relationship at least to a few close colleagues. Yui, however, was firm in her refusal. She believed the risks were too high for both of their careers and did not want to be the talk of the office. While Masugu agrees, he tries to plead with her for softer treatment during work hours due to it being difficult to receive her harsh remarks during work. But Yui explains that her harshness was a defense mechanism to ensure no one suspected their connection, finding it difficult to be softer in fear that she might let loose and express her affection. She lists all the things they couldn't do in public, from sharing lunches to being overly friendly and even going out on dates. Masugu couldn't help but question whether they were really dating when their interactions were so restricted. But as Yui turns to him with a shy smile, he finds himself falling for her all over again with how adorable she is when she suggests that they could date in public while wearing masks. The following days were a whirlwind of activity for both departments. Masugu, who worked in accounting, found himself swamped with tasks. In the planning department, Yui saw an opportunity to visit him by volunteering to deliver paperwork. She tried to mask her excitement, but her friends noticed her eagerness and teased her about always acting so fierce when visiting the accounting floor. They decided to block her by playing a game to determine who would deliver the documents. Yui spends the rest of the day feeling down, having missed her chance to see Masugu during the busy week. At the end of one particularly tiring day, Masugu received a message from Yui saying she had gone home ahead of him. He replied, asking if he could call her, but there was no response. Smiling on his commute back home, he guesses that she must have fallen asleep early, exhausted from the week's workload. The next morning, Masugu rushes to the elevator with a stack of documents in hand, lamenting the never-ending busy period in his department. He pays half attention to Shizuno as he realizes that he'll probably be working overtime again and won't be able to get much sleep and nourishment. When the elevator doors open for another floor, he is surprised to see Yui entering the elevator. She appeared perfectly composed, her ability to hide her emotions in public a stark contrast to his own struggle, since he felt an immediate sense of relief the moment he saw her. As they stand side by side, Shizuno begins thanking Yui for her help with some tasks. Shizuno even brings Masugu into the conversation, asking for his opinion on Yui's skills. Masugu gave a measured response, carefully complimenting her without revealing too much. Yui's ears turn red, and Masugu notices her embarrassment despite her attempt to act as if she hates him and is above his compliment. As more people entered the elevator, the space grew tighter, forcing Masugu and Yui closer together. In the brief moment when no one was looking, they allowed themselves the small comfort of holding hands, a quiet moment of connection amidst the chaos, which was unfortunately stopped once they reached their floor. After a few days, the busy period finally ends, and Masugu and Yui call each other to plan a rare movie date since they barely had time to do couple-like activities since they began dating. Over the phone, Yui suggests that they start addressing each other by their given names in private, adding a new rule to their growing list of do's and don'ts in their relationship. Although Masugu feels nervous about the change, he agrees to try since they're a couple, and they should be addressing each other comfortably. On the evening of their date, Yui arrives at the meeting place early, having taken the time to freshen up and style her hair in a nearby restroom. Masugu, arriving straight from work, was struck by how pretty she looked. When he compliments her, Yui blushes deeply, struggling to maintain her composure since she isn't used to him complimenting her out in the open. Trying to get her to ease up, Masubu asks her what movie she has decided on, and she tells him it's the horror film they agreed on over the phone yesterday, but accidentally refers to him by his last name. Masubu is a bit put off that Yui is unable to speak his name, so he reminds her of the rule they made yesterday by calling her by their first name. Hearing her name come out of his mouth for the first time causes Yui to get embarrassed and shy all of a sudden, so she tells him to slow down for a second. Meanwhile, Masubu is happy that he got that sort of reaction from Yui, but also scolds himself for being a child about it since they are both adults. During the movie, Masubu finds himself distracted by the realization that they couldn't freely address each other by their first names despite yearning for this intimacy for almost 6 years. However, the film's intense scenes that echo through the movie room soon draw his attention. He realizes that they might have picked a film that was too gory to enjoy. At one particularly frightening moment, he felt Yui grasp his hand tightly. As they exited the theater, Masubu teased Yui about grabbing his hand during a film, making her blush once more. He decides to invite her for dinner, but before they can decide where to eat, Suya, a former co-worker and senior from Yui's university, notices Yui and calls out her name. Masubu notices him and quickly turns his head, hoping Suya wouldn't notice him. Saya greets Yui warmly, and Masubu immediately grows anxious, worried that their secret might be exposed. However, Suya then notices Masubu and greets him, inviting Masubu to join them for dinner since he's willing to pay for both of his juniors. They reluctantly accept since they feel refusing him might seem suspicious, and Yui desperately messages Masubu to keep their relationship a secret. Throughout the meal, Saya compliments Yui on her achievements in the planning department, making her visibly pleased. Masubu couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy, recalling old rumors about Saya and Yui dating back when Saya still worked at their office. He notices how candid and happy Yui is when she speaks to Saya and notes that they always had a special relationship together when they were working in the same office. Masubu struggled to keep his emotions in check as Saya asked how he was doing in the accounting department. He responded politely, keeping the conversation neutral. When Saya mentioned seeing a movie earlier, Masubu and Yui awkwardly denied having watched the same film, their poorly concealed tension making Masubu worry that Saya might suspect that they were going out. However, Masubu decides that it might not be a bad idea to let Saya know that he and Yui are dating since Saya already belongs to a different branch. This might also quell the jealousy he feels inside once he lets his rival know that Yui is already his girlfriend. However, he decides not to reveal his secret when he feels Yui's trembling hands tug on his clothes. He comes up with a clever story of running into Yui, who was wondering what movies she should watch to relax. Able to resist the urge to claim Yui as his, Masubu was able to go through dinner as normal as possible. By the end of dinner, Sia bids them goodnight and gives them a wink before leaving, hinting that he knows something is going on between them. However, Yui seems oblivious, confident that Sia doesn't suspect a thing. Masubu decides to entertain her despite suspecting Sia of already being aware. Finally, alone, Yui gathers the courage to address Masubu by his first name for the first time. Masubu couldn't resist teasing her for taking so long, reminding her that she had called Saya by his first name effortlessly during dinner. This leaves Yui embarrassed, and she desperately tries to explain her reasoning for calling Saya by his first name. However, she didn't notice that Masubu started leaning closer in her panicked state. Just as he is about to kiss her, she stops him, reminding him of their agreement to avoid public displays of affection, especially since they might get caught by another acquaintance. Masubu agrees, but cheekily suggests they continue their business at his house. The next morning, Masubu wakes up to find Yui looking embarrassed yet endearing as she struggles to accept the reality of the night before. So he teases her relentlessly, enjoying her flustered reactions before it is ultimately time for them to get ready for work. As they wait for the train, Masubu notices that Yui is still wearing the same clothes as the day before, worried that people might spread rumors about her sleeping around if they notice. She reassures him that she has a spare outfit in her locker at work, confident that no one in the planning department would suspect a thing if she manages to change in time. To avoid being seen together at the office, they decided to take separate trains. As Masubu boards the first train, he spots Maria among the passengers and realizes she lives nearby, grateful she did not notice Yui with him. He glances back at Yui one last time before the train doors close, grateful that their relationship, though challenging, continues to grow stronger with each passing day. Another morning begins, and Masubu and Yui must once again hide their relationship from their colleagues. On their way to work, they accidentally bump into each other, putting them in a difficult situation. They can't decide whether to acknowledge each other or pretend they didn't see the other. Either way, it risks becoming an awkward moment if their office mates find out. They settle for a curt good morning before continuing on their way to the office. Yui cautiously puts on her usual fierce demeanor and hurls insults at Masubu, who responds with equal harshness to maintain their act. After a busy day at work, they decide to unwind at a bar. Masubu notices Yui stifling a yawn, clearly more exhausted than usual. She explains that her work is almost done, expressing her excitement about the launch of a new snack product she's spearheading, a significant milestone for her since it will be her first snack product. Despite her cheerful confidence, Yui secretly struggles with finalizing the product. The biggest hurdle is deciding on the perfect topping. A colleague from the planning department tells her that the accounting team has someone with an exceptional eye and taste for snacks. In the accounting department, Masugu helps Shizuno move boxes when Yui arrives. He assumes she's there to see him, but feels disappointed when she approaches Maria instead. Yumi explained that she was directed to Maria for advice. Maria samples 2 versions of the product and takes a bite of each one. She confidently recommends the one with coconut toppings and also shares insights on the best markets to release the product. Yui, eager to absorb the advice, diligently takes notes, impressed by Maria's expertise when it comes to food. Surprised that someone from accounting has such talent, Yui compliments Maria and mentions her popularity among snack reviewers online. This flusters Maria, who sheepishly asks Yui to keep her secret. She confesses that her bubbly, snack-loving online persona contrasts sharply with her professional image at work, and she doesn't want people in the office to treat her differently due to the girly persona she is online. Amused by Maria's unexpected shyness and dedication to her profession, Yui reassures her, promising to keep the secret. Her kind words surprised Maria, who had always seen Yui as fierce and intimidating due to her sharp tongue. Whenever she saw Masugu in the department, Maria begins to wonder if Yui might actually be kind to others and only harsh towards Masugu. Maria then tells Yui that she understands why Yui is rude to Masugu, citing his impossible personality. She recalls how Masugu once scolded her and Shizuno for using inconsistent fonts and spacing, ignoring the fact that Shizuno is their superior. Yui agrees, but her face betrays her. A smile blooms as a memory sparks fond thoughts of Masugu's nitpicky nature during their private time together. When Maria lists more of Masugu's annoying habits, we can't help but think of them as endearing quirks she loves about him. Surprisingly, Maria doesn't catch on and assumes Yui simply hates Masugu because she's been agreeing with her the whole time despite the dreamy smile on her face. Relieved that her secret wasn't revealed, Yui begins to worry that everyone finds Masugu annoying in his department. However, just as she starts to feel bad, Maria starts complimenting Masugu, pointing out how he's always the first to offer a hand when someone needs assistance. In a small voice, Yui admits she already knows that, recalling the time Masugu helped her when she dropped a stack of papers in the hallway, an event that sparked her feelings for him. As Maria continues munching on snacks, she muses about how much she and Shizuno rely on Masugu. She mentions that his willingness to help often makes him easy to take advantage of. Yui's facade begins to crack as she fidgets and grips her pencil, complaining about how kind Masugu is. She starts rambling about his great qualities, prompting Maria to cut her off by putting her hand in front of Yui. Maria clarifies that she isn't romantically interested in Masugu and isn't sure how to continue the conversation, since it seems Yui is trying to convince Maria that Masugu is good for her. Yui freezes, worried Maria might have caught on to her feelings for Masugu. However, Maria seems to assume they simply have a competitive and complex relationship, noting how they join the office at the same time. Later that evening, Yui spends time with Masugu at his place. Both of them are cleaning up after dinner when she notices that his shoulders have been bothering him. She offers to massage his shoulders and leads them to his room, where she immediately gets to work removing the knots on his muscles. Masugu enjoys the massage and takes the opportunity to ask Yui why she needed Maria's help earlier. Yui vaguely explains that it was about the new product, but avoids mentioning Maria's secret snack review talents and her online persona. She adds that they had a brief chat about Maria's opinion of him, but also refuses to share what she learned about what his department thinks of him. Suspicious of Yui's sudden thoughtfulness, Masugu asks why she's being so considerate when she offers him a massage. Yui explains she noticed him moving equipment in the office earlier and wanted to reward his hard work since it might have caused his shoulders to ache. She then shyly admits it's hard to resist touching him at work, making Masugu's face turn red. She suddenly realizes what she's implying and gets embarrassed, her face turning an equal shade. Yui quickly tries to cover it up by suggesting that he give her a massage next, once she's done giving him his massage. A few days later, Yui walks into the planning department in a good mood, carrying a bag of improved snack samples based on Maria's suggestions. She distributes them to her team, asking for their feedback later. When she hands a snack to Kizuki, she mimics he's struggling with his computer and helps him with a smile. Kizuki thanked her before returning to his work. Meanwhile, Masugu is in a less optimistic mood as he faces challenges in the accounting department as his accounts are rejected by the deputy director. Feeling dejected, he returns to his seat, where Shizuno and Maria try to console him, urging him not to take the criticism to heart. Frustrated, Masugu steps out to clear his head and grabs a coffee from the vending machine. He reflects on the situation, convinced the deputy director is simply out to bully him for doing a good job, when he only added 2 lines to the whole report. 2 of Masugu's friends find him in a distressed state, and he tries his best to mask how upset he is, though he's aware the expression on his face and body language betray him. Unfortunately, Yui also notices him. His friends tease him, saying he's about to get a scolding. Just as he assumes Yui won't approach him, she surprises him by doing the exact opposite. With a bright smile, she walks over to the group and hands out samples of her product, asking each of them to give their opinion on the snack so she can further improve it. As the group marvels at the snack's layers of flavor and the generous amount of chocolate, Masugu is taken aback when Yui approaches him directly to offer a sample. Hesitantly, he takes it from her hand and eats it, commenting that it's just fine. His lukewarm review irritates Yui, and she demands a more detailed critique. She tells him she's willing to accept even criticism since it'll help her improve. Masugu is impressed by her openness to feedback, something he struggles to face since he takes it as an insult. Following her instructions, he points out that the chocolate topping is a bit too much, making the snack slightly messy to eat, motioning the chocolate stain on his thumb. While his friends dismiss the issue as minor, Yui acknowledges that Masugu has a valid point. She admits that most people wouldn't want a snack that's inconvenient to eat. Thanking them for the feedback, she heads back to her department to implement the changes. Inspired by her determination, Masugu decides to return to his desk and redo his report, wishing to do his best since Yui deals with harsh feedback on a daily basis without complaint. After a long day, Shizuno invites Maria and Masugu out for drinks as a reward for their hard work. Masugu considers joining, especially since Yui often goes out with her department for drinks, and he's curious about the experience. Unexpectedly, their group runs into some members of the planning department, including Yui, at the same restaurant. They all end up in the same space, though seated at separate tables. Shizuno playfully nudges Masugu and Yui to interact, hoping a little liquid courage might ease the tension between them. Despite this, Masugu and Yui keep their distance, each staying with their respective groups. Masugu gets caught up in a conversation with Yui's friends and Kizuki, who is notably drinking juice instead of alcohol. When Kizuki excuses himself, the girls apologize for his reserved personality, explaining that he's new to their department. They share that Yui is the one who convinced Kizuki to join their outings. They praise her for taking good care of him and everyone else in the department, attributing it to her bright and welcoming personality. As Masugu listens to Yui's friends speak highly of her, he feels a swell of pride, knowing he's the one she's dating. Glancing over at her table, he's shocked to see it filled with empty beer glasses, a sure sign that Yui has clearly been drinking a lot. Suddenly, she gets up and heads toward the washroom, crouching down by the sink. Worried she might have overdone it, Masugu rushes to her side. He offers to help her back to the table so she can rest, but Yui stubbornly refuses, not wanting to cause concern among her office mates. Finding her defiance adorable, Masugu lightly teases her while rubbing her back to comfort her. Yui frets about the possibility of being caught, but Masugu reassures her that it's normal for colleagues to help each other in this situation. Realizing she may have overdrunk because of his presence, he apologizes. However, Yui, influenced by the alcohol, gets mad at him before relishing the cooling sensation of his hand on hers. Eventually, she declares she'll stay at his place for the night and drifts off to sleep, cold to the fact they are still in public. Just then, Kizuki exits the men's washroom, catching Masugu red-handed with Yui. Kizuki awkwardly explained that he'd been waiting for an opening to leave but didn't want to interrupt until Yui fell asleep. Kizuki awkwardly asks if Masugu and Yui are dating. Feeling there's no point in denying it, Masugu confirms their relationship. The next day, Masugu tells Yui that Kizuki knows their secret, causing her to panic. She eerily suggests locking Kizuki in the storage room and taking him out there to ensure he doesn't tell anyone, but Masugu calms her down, assuring her she's overthinking the situation. He tries to convince her that Kizuki doesn't seem like the type to spread rumors. While Yui reluctantly agrees, she still worries about the small chance he might tell someone, potentially damaging their reputations and careers, especially Masugu's, given how hard he's worked at the company. Moved by her concern for him, Masugu ruffles her hair and reassures her that as long as they act as they normally do in the office, everything will be fine. In the accounting department, Masugu notices that everything seems normal. To his relief, his report has even been approved. Spotting Kizuki by the vending machines, he approaches him casually and requests again that he keep their secret. Kizuki wonders why they're hiding their relationship when the office doesn't prohibit workplace romances. Masugu explains that they want to maintain a professional image, especially since so many people depend on Yui. Hearing the sincerity in Masugu's voice, Kizuki promises not to tell anyone, adding that he wants to protect Yui too. He remarks that seeing a different side of her was surprising, and Masugu responds by saying he finds her most charming that way. As Masugu walks away, he starts thinking about the future. The idea of marrying Yui crosses his mind and he smiles, hoping he can stay by her side and witness her brilliance every day. It's another busy day for the planning department at the office. While Yui's team has managed to develop an impressive snack to sell, they still have other critical tasks to handle, such as designing the packaging. Yui passionately advocates for a trendy, eye-catching design to grab customers' attention. However, some of the bosses, including Kizuki, prefer a simpler, more traditional approach. Just as Yui is about to argue her case, she remembers that Kizuki knows about her secret relationship with Masugu. Deciding it's better to stay on Kizuki's good side, she bites her tongue and agrees to take his feedback into account, reconsidering the simple design for now. After work, Yui heads home and prepares dinner for Masugu. When he finally arrives, she's overjoyed to see he's brought her a box of donuts from a shop she's been eager to try. She sits him down in her cozy living area and goes to the kitchen to plate the donuts and brew some coffee, humming a cheerful tune as she works. From his seat, Masugu glances around her apartment and notices that her collection of Mr. Rabbit's toys has grown since his last visit. He fondly recalls how much Yui loves this particular character and reflects that her apartment, filled with things she adores, feels so lively compared to his own plain and minimalist space. Yui returns with the donuts and coffee, her cheerful demeanor shifting to a serious one as she deliberates over which donut to try first. Watching her furrowed brow, Masugu is reminded of her critical nature at work. When she finally settles on a maple-flavored donut, her mood shifts again, and she reverts to the bubbly and charming Yui he loves seeing during their personal time. Sitting down beside him, Yui takes a bite of her donut. Her eyes light up as the sweet maple flavor envelops her senses, and she lets out a delighted sigh. Masugu watches her expression, captivated by how vividly her emotions show over something as simple as a dessert. He wonders aloud if she's always loved snacks this much. Yui pauses thoughtful before admitting she's always enjoyed snacking but grew to love sampling different brands and treats after joining the company. Working in the planning department, surrounded by food products and snack-loving colleagues, has deepened her appreciation for trying new things. She then turns the question back to Masugu, motioning toward the untouched box of donuts. Surprised, he realizes he doesn't particularly enjoy snacks. He bought them because he knew Yui would enjoy them. Over time, he's learned her tastes and delights in seeing her happy. As he takes a bite of a chocolate donut, he's surprised at how delicious it is, his face lighting up with a mix of wonder and delight. Yui notices his rare expression and leans in to kiss him, grinning as she tells him he looks adorable and that she can't help herself. Suddenly feeling shy over her bold move, Yui quickly gets up from her seat and offers to make Masugu more coffee. Masugu, still stunned by the unexpected kiss, feels his cheeks warm as he processes what just happened. He can't help but smile, realizing that every new side of Yui he discovers makes him fall even deeper in love with her. As they finish the donuts, Yui sighs and begins to vent. She admits that she feels nervous whenever she has to interact with Kizuki, especially during team meetings. Masugu listens attentively, offering her a reassuring smile. He reminds her to take things easy and not overthink them, pointing out that Kizuki had already promised to keep their secret. To further comfort her, he gently pats her head and fondly remembers how Kizuki had even hinted at their potential to get married someday, making him blush. The next day, however, Yui finds herself just as nervous during another team meeting. Sitting across from Kizuki, her anxiety grows as she recalls how Masugu seemed to be holding something back when he talked about their conversation. Instead of focusing on the meeting, Yui begins throwing suspicious glances at Kizuki, her thoughts spiraling into wild assumptions about how much he knows. Her internal monologue is interrupted when one of her teammates excitedly mentions that Yui has been raving about Angel Donuts lately, commenting on how adorable the packaging is. Yui freezes for a moment, realizing that her absent-mindedness has been noticed. Hoping to save face, she quickly agrees and explains that a friend brought her some donuts recently. As soon as the words leave her mouth, panic sets in. She realizes that Kizuki might connect the dots and figure out the friend is actually Masugu. In a hurried attempt to cover her tracks, Yui adds that the friend is more of an acquaintance and awkwardly mentions that it's a female, her darting eyes betraying her nervousness. Kizuki notices Yui's odd behavior, but doesn't really know who the person is in Yui's story. However, her jumpiness turns to a different level when their team suggests asking the accounting department for funds to buy donuts so they can try it for themselves. Kizuki, initially confused by Yui's odd behavior, begins to piece things together. It dawns on him that the friend she's referring to is indeed Masugu, and her frantic attempts to obfuscate the truth are only making it more obvious. He suppresses a sigh, realizing that keeping Yui and Masugu's relationship a secret might be more challenging than he anticipated. To make matters worse, it also seems that Yui doesn't trust him to keep the secret. As Yui and Kizuki are lost in their own thoughts, two of their teammates are suddenly called away to a meeting with the section chief. Before leaving, they dump 2 tall stacks of paperwork in front of Yui and Kizuki, asking them to file it in their absence. The room is soon filled with awkward silence as Yui and Kizuki work side by side. Yui, desperate to ease the growing tension, attempts to make small talk, but her voice trails off when Kizuki offers only a polite and curt response. Feeling tired, Kizuki lowers his voice and asks Yui if she finds him unreliable, his tone tinged with hesitation. Yui realizes her behavior might have made him think she distrusts him. Determined to clear things up, she puts down her papers and slaps her cheeks lightly, a habit she uses to hype herself up. The action catches Kizuki's attention, and she seizes the moment to apologize. She explains that her nerves come from the novelty of being in a secret relationship, since it is something very new to her, not from any doubts about him. Her face reddens, though, revealing a mix of giddiness and embarrassment instead of the seriousness the situation calls for. Kizuki notices and seems to relax, teasing her that her face doesn't seem sorry at all. The mood turns lighter and Yui apologizes for acting so unserious as his senior officer. Kizuki, composed but a little amused, warns her that if she keeps wearing her emotions so openly, others might figure out her secret without his help. Acknowledging the reprimand, Yui nods and accepts her mistake. She apologizes again before they both refocus on sorting and filing the papers. Over in the accounting department, Masubu gets tasked with retrieving a document from the warehouse archives. He quickly finds it, appreciating how the recent cleanup effort made the section much easier to navigate. As he prepares to leave, a loud crash from a nearby room grabs his attention. Worrying something might have happened, he hurries to check and finds Yui on the floor, wincing as she rubs her lower back. Their eyes meet, and they instinctively call out to each other in excitement. Realizing where they are, though, they quickly revert to using formal last names. Yumi explains that several items fell suddenly, startling her and causing her to fall. Masubu scans the room and immediately notices the disarray in the planning department's archives, a stark contrast to the neatly organized accounting section. He silently wonders how they even managed to find anything in the mess. Admitting the problem, Yui tells him that management has already instructed her team to clean it up. She starts gathering the scattered items, muttering about finding a temporary place to store them. Noticing her struggle, Masubu begins helping her pick up the mess. Still cautious about being seen together, Yui protests, insisting he doesn't need to help. Masubu ignores her protests, quipping that her department clearly isn't organized enough to handle it alone. Despite the risk of being caught, Masubu can't help but feel happy that these little moments in the office still allow him to see Yui. While sorting through the disorganized archives, he carries a flag and calls out to Yui, hoping she knows where it belongs. Yui suddenly appears next to him, her expression shifting to excitement as she recognizes the flag is the exact one she used during her first presale events when she first entered the company. For a brief moment, she drops her guarded demeanor, revealing the Yui he knows outside of work. But just as quickly, she reverts to her cold, professional attitude and instructs him to place the flag in a corner. She returns to a corner to organize more items while repeatedly reminding herself to remain in work mode so she won't get caught up in sharing intimate things with Masubu. Masubu obeys, though he wonders if their rule about staying distant during work hours still needs to apply, especially since they're alone at the moment. As they continue tidying up in silence, Yui reaches for an upper shelf. Masubu offers to handle it, but she insists on doing it herself. Hesitantly, she asks him to hold the ladder steady while she climbs. He agrees, holding it firmly as she organizes the shelf. From his position, Masubu notices her skirt and feels a wave of relief that he's the one helping her, not someone else. He eventually lets go of the ladder so he can call out to her, suggesting she come down and let him handle the task. When she refuses, he decides to remind her that she is wearing a skirt today. Yui freezes in shock as the realization hits her, and her sudden movements make the ladder wobble. She loses her balance and topples over, but Masubu catches her just in time. Holding each other tightly, they remind themselves of where they are, but the close proximity draws them closer. Just as they're about to kiss, Yui's friends from the planning department burst into the room, announcing that they are ready to help Yui with the cleaning. Masubu and Yui manage to hide themselves before they get caught, squeezing into a tight space to avoid being seen. In their cramped hiding spot, Masubu struggles to maintain an awkward position without touching Yui or knocking over a nearby signboard. Yui, sensing his discomfort, whispers for him to relax and touch her if needed to keep them hidden. Masubu complies, understanding that if he falls, their secret will be found out. Finding it easier to be in the new position, they remain perfectly still until Yui's friends eventually leave. Once the coast is clear, they breathe a sigh of relief, agreeing it's best to maintain their professional distance at work to avoid a similar incident. A few days later, their colleague Shizuno announces she has 7 tickets to a baseball game, earning an excited reaction from Masubu, a diehard fan. On game day, Yui finds herself among the group with Masubu, who silently celebrates the chance to share one of his favorite activities with her despite being in the presence of others in the office. Throughout the game, Masugu enthusiastically explains the rules and strategies to a confused Yui. When their team scores, Masugu, caught up in the moment, clasps her hand. Realizing their coworkers might see, he glances around but is relieved to find everyone engrossed in the game. Later, the two retrieve snacks for the group. In the bustling crowd, Masugu suggests holding hands, reasoning it's less suspicious in the chaos. Yui agrees, enjoying the moment despite her initial hesitation. As they return to the stadium, their team hits a home run. Masugu, overwhelmed with joy, hugs Yui, forgetting their surroundings. To their surprise, Shizuno joins in the hug, caught up in her own excitement about the game. Relieved that Shizuno suspects nothing, they return to their seats. Yui leans toward Masugu and whispers that next time they should attend a game alone the next time so they can enjoy each other's presence without any worry. Yui and her friends head to a convenience store during lunch, each picking out their meals. However, Yui's focus isn't just on food. She discreetly checks the shelves for her newly developed snack product. Her heart sinks when she notices that barely anyone has touched it. The lack of interest in her work weighs heavily on her. The next morning, Shizuno starts her day early as usual. She exits the train and begins her walk when she bumps into a male colleague from her company. The man greets her with a compliment on her dedication, pointing out that she always arrives early. Shizuno chuckles and modestly returns the compliment, but he admits that he's only there to finish leftover paperwork from the previous day. They exchange lighthearted chatter before Shizuno excuses herself, claiming she needs to make a quick stop before heading to work. The man nods and continues on his way while Shizuno veers off to a small cafe nearby. Relieved to have a quiet moment to herself, she settles into a booth and flips through the menu, contemplating what to order with her coffee. Her peaceful morning takes an unexpected turn when Kizuki walks into the cafe. The waitress, assuming they're friends, seats him in the same booth as Shizuno. Disappointed at having her solitude interrupted, Shizuno sighs inwardly but forces a polite smile. When they both attempt to place their orders at the same time, an awkward standoff ensues as they insist the other go first. Their exaggerated politeness only heightens the tension, making the air between them tense. Meanwhile, Yui is on her way to work, riding the train while anxiously scrolling through her phone. She checks online for any buzz about her new snack product, but to her dismay, there's still no chatter. Yui unexpectedly bumps into Masugu. They exchange polite greetings, slipping back into their usual professional dynamic. However, as they walk together, Masugu notices something off about her demeanor. Concerned, he asks if something is bothering her, mentioning that she seemed down during their phone call the night before. Yui brushes off his concern, blaming her mood on the overtime she's been putting in lately. Sensing she's hiding something, Masugu shifts the conversation to her new product. Yui nods and agrees that it's exciting, though her subdued tone betrays her true feelings. Back at the cafe, Shizuno and Kizuki receive their food, only to realize they ordered the exact same meal. Shizuno feels even more awkward and watches as Kizuki starts eating, silently encouraging her to do the same. Searching for a way to break the tension, Shizuno tries to make small talk. She tells Kizuki that he shouldn't feel obligated to wait for her if he finishes first. As Shizuno continues to chatter aimlessly, Kizuki interrupts her gently, pointing out that her food is getting cold and encouraging her to eat. He reassures her that she doesn't need to feel obligated to make conversation, mentioning that he actually prefers quiet mornings alone at the cafe. Shizuno feels a wave of relief at their shared appreciation for peaceful solitude. She excuses herself, saying she'll focus on work while finishing her breakfast. Kizuki nods in agreement and pulls out a book he's been meaning to read, settling into his own quiet routine. As Shizuno alternates between bites of her sandwich and typing away on her laptop, she sneaks a glance at Kizuki. There's something comforting about his calm demeanor, and she finds herself admiring his maturity and quiet confidence. For once, she appreciates a moment where she doesn't feel the need to fill the silence with meaningless chatter. Time slips by and Kizuki eventually closes his book, announcing that he'll head to the office ahead of her. Before leaving, he surprises Shizuno by saying he enjoyed their breakfast together and that his opinion of her as a drunk has shifted. Shizuno freezes, caught off guard by the comment. Realizing that he must be referring to an embarrassing incident from the baseball game, she suddenly worries about how he perceives her. Before she can respond, Kizuki is already heading toward the door. She sighs, trying to shake off the remark, and resolves to focus on her work with a smile. Meanwhile, at the office, Yui sits at her desk, anxiously refreshing the webpage tracking her product's performance. Despite using Maria's online influence to promote the snack, there's still no buzz. Yui's frustration grows when she overhears colleagues from another department celebrating the success of a different product launch. Jealous and disheartened, Yui begins drafting an email to her superiors explaining that her product needs more time to gain traction, since it's entirely new and not just a repackaged item. Just as she's deep in thought, Kizuki suddenly approaches her desk, startling her into closing her email window. He hands her a stack of documents, explaining that the section chief has assigned them to input new data. Without waiting for a response, he returns to his own desk, leaving Yui simmering with frustration. As Yui works through the data, her irritation mounts. She feels overlooked, especially since no one, not even her team, seems excited about her product launch. When Chiharu, a teammate, offers her some chocolates to try, Yui snaps, refusing outright and raising her voice. The entire office goes silent, shocked by her uncharacteristic outburst. Realizing her mistake, Yui instantly regrets her behavior. That evening, Yui visits Masugu. Without much thought or warning, she had decided to head to his place seeking solace. Masugu is visibly surprised to see her, especially since she looks completely drained. Welcoming her in, Masugu quickly sets about preparing food and drinks for them, though he can't hide his concern. He watches her closely, noticing the exhaustion and frustration etched on her face, wondering what could have brought her to his doorstep in such a state. After handing her a beer, Masugu listens intently as Yui immediately dives into a rant. She vents about how the section chief dumped extra work on her while she was already busy checking the progress of her product. Her frustration spills over as she complains about how no one in the office even noticed the launch of her snack. Instead, her coworkers were all abuzz with excitement over another product, one that didn't require as much effort or innovation. Yui's voice grows louder as she continues, her irritation clear. She laments how, even in convenience stores, her product sits untouched on the shelves. The sight of it gathering dust had crushed her spirit, making her feel as though all her hard work had amounted to nothing. Finally, her words falter and tears begin to pool in her eyes as she finishes her rant. Masugu, taken aback by the depth of her emotions, gently reassures her that it's normal to feel upset, especially when she's invested so much time and effort. He reminds her that all the departments in the company care about the success of every product launch, even if it doesn't always seem like it. He also mentions the difficulty they faced securing the budget for her product, proof that her team had been rooting for her from the start. Encouraging her to be more honest about her feelings, Masugu advises Yui to talk openly with her section chief if she feels overwhelmed or undervalued. The next day, Yui heads to a nearby convenience store to pick up snacks as a gesture of apology for her coworkers. While browsing, she overhears two students debating whether to buy her snack. Her heart pounds as she watches them deliberate, and to her delight, they ultimately decide to add the product to their basket. Overwhelmed with joy, Yui smiles to herself, finally feeling validated. Later, Yui walks into work with renewed energy. During lunch, Yui feels a bit drained from back-to-back morning meetings. Her two friends join her, chatting about how busy the planning department has been with meetings and data entry. However, they agree that the workload feels more manageable when they have a good meal to look forward to. As Yui takes a bite of her food, her ears perk up at the sound of Masugu's name mentioned by the table next to hers. Pretending not to notice, she leans in slightly to eavesdrop, her heart swelling as she hears the girls complimenting her boyfriend. They praise his reliability, tall stature, and overall likability, clearly impressed by him. But as the conversation continues, Yui notices that their admiration might border on infatuation. Her chest tightens with worry, and she begins to wonder if Masugu's good traits make him too popular for comfort. Yui's friends, who had been discreetly listening to the conversation at the next table, nod in agreement as they admit that Masugu is indeed likable. Their remarks only deepen Yui's self-consciousness as she glances at the girls praising her boyfriend. Compared to them, she feels plain in her casual attire and minimal makeup. She begins to notice how little effort she has been putting into her appearance, even when spending time with Masugu. A flicker of insecurity rises as she wonders if she is doing enough to keep his interest. The next evening, Masugu immediately senses something unusual. Yui, seated neatly in his room, is dressed far more elegantly than her typical relaxed style. Her composed demeanor makes him uneasy as he considers whether something might have gone wrong at work again. He decides to address her unusual behavior, but before he can say much, Yui remarks that it feels warm in the room, her tone suggestive as she tries to set a romantic mood. Misinterpreting her intentions, Masugu promptly lowers the temperature of the air conditioner, believing she's uncomfortable. Yui, determined to get her point across, tries again. She hints at being in the mood for intimacy, hoping to spark a reaction, but instead, Masugu grows more concerned, realizing that something is off. Taking her hands, he reassures her that she can always be honest with him and speak her mind. Finally, Yui confesses the reason behind her actions. She explains how she overheard the girls at the cafeteria admiring Masugu and how it made her feel inadequate. She admits her insecurities and reveals her desire to appear more appealing to him. He assures her that she has nothing to worry about, reminding her that she is the one he loves and no one else. He admits to himself that he often worries about how popular she is among their male colleagues. He tells her there's no need for her to force herself to appear sexy. His words trigger something in Yui, so she removes her top and tackles him with a kiss, startling him with her boldness. Despite his initial shock, Masugu gently asks if they can take things slow since he hasn't gotten the chance to shower yet. Yui refuses, telling him she plans to serve him for the evening. However, after a short while, she starts feeling flustered and nervous and admits she might have gotten ahead of herself. Masubu, overwhelmed by his affection for her, carries her to the bed and pins her gently. He expresses how happy he is to share such intimate moments with her, relishing in the knowledge that their bond is unique and special. The next morning, Yui finds herself lost in thought, her mind replaying the events of the previous night. In an elevator, Chiharu notices Yui's distracted and slightly fatigued appearance, so she asks her if she's feeling okay. Yui brushes it off with a vague excuse about their busy schedule. Later, girls from the cafeteria join them in the elevator. As they chat, she overhears them once again praising Masubu, their admiration undiminished. Instead of feeling jealous, Yui experiences a wave of fondness, taking quiet pride in the fact that the man they admire so much is hers. When the elevator doors open again, Masubu steps in. He pauses for a moment when he spots Yui before positioning himself behind her and next to the girls. The girl sees the opportunity to ask him about his weekends, clearly fishing for information. Masubu, knowing Yui might appreciate some reassurance, casually mentions that he usually spends his weekends with his girlfriend. When the girls and Masubu exit on their floor, Chiharu quickly approaches Yui and asks her if she heard that Masubu has a girlfriend. Yui, playing it cool, responds with feigned indifference, remarking that it isn't surprising given Masubu's kind nature. Masubu enjoys a rare relaxing day at work, with the entire office seemingly adopting a vacation mindset. Conversations about summer vacation plans fill the air, with his team members excitedly sharing their upcoming trips. Maria mentions that she plans to visit Nagoya. Shizuno, on the other hand, says she will be working through the break since tourist spots are always too crowded for her liking. Maria and Shizuno suddenly turn their attention to Masubu, their curiosity piqued about his own vacation plans. At that moment, Masubu recalls the heated debate he had with Yui a month ago, when they struggled to decide on a destination for their summer vacation. Unable to plan with a travel agency, they decided to discuss their vacation in Yui's apartment. They sat down with several pamphlets sprawled across Yui's table. Masubu had immediately vetoed Yui's first choice, Okinawa, pointing out that typhoon season could ruin their trip. Yui was insistent, arguing that there were plenty of things to do, but Masubu remained unconvinced, especially after seeing the lengthy itinerary she had prepared. He pointed out that her schedule was overly ambitious, packed with too many activities to fit into their short vacation time. In contrast, Masubu preferred something more laid back. His ideal trip was to Hokkaido, where they could enjoy the onsen, go on scenic drives, and eat at cozy grill restaurants. However, Yui found his idea boring, wanting something more thrilling and memorable. Growing tired of the discussion, Masubu had casually said they could go wherever Yui wanted, just to end the debate. Unfortunately, he failed to realize that his offhanded tone made it seem like he didn't care at all. This only worsened the situation as Yui, feeling dismissed, suddenly declared that they should just cancel the trip altogether if they couldn't find a way to make it enjoyable for both of them. Realizing his mistake, Masubu immediately reached for her hands, reassuring her that the destination didn't matter as long as they were together. He then, somewhat hesitantly, admitted that what he truly wanted was to experience a private bath with her since it would be their first trip as a couple. The confession caught Yui off guard, and her frustration quickly melted away into embarrassment. To shift the mood, she teasingly invited Masubu to take a bath with her right then and there, knowing now that it was something he secretly wanted. Squeezed together in Yui's small bathtub, she enjoyed the intimacy of the moment, but Masubu, feeling cramped and uncomfortable, couldn't help but think that a spacious hotel bath would be much better. Yui suggested they consider a new hotel in Yamanashi, hinting that it might be the perfect compromise for their trip. Returning to the present, Masubu finally responds to his colleagues, telling them that he plans to visit Yamanashi, his hometown. As the workday comes to an end, Yui eagerly finishes her tasks, excited to head home and start packing for their long-awaited trip. Just as she's about to leave, she receives a text from Masubu, who is checking in on her as usual. She smiles, ready to reply, but before she can type out her response, sudden chaos erupts in the office. An emergency has broken out in the planning department, and the entire team is in disarray. Itsuro immediately informs Yui and Yukiko that they will have to work overtime to resolve the issue. Yui's hopes of leaving work early to prepare for her trip vanish in an instant. Meanwhile, Masubu grows increasingly concerned as the hours pass without any word from Yui. She had left her phone unattended in her bag to avoid distractions, completely focused on ensuring that the products were ready for delivery to the launch site. Itsuro begins to feel the weight of the looming deadline. With frustration in his voice, he informs Yui and Yukiko that they will likely need to work through the night to finish everything. Yui's stomach sinks. The realization of not being able to go on vacation begins to settle. Even though she knows Masubu would understand, disappointment wells up inside her. But instead of dwelling on it, she grits her teeth and pushes forward, determined to finish the work as soon as possible. To her luck, the on-site team unexpectedly arrives at the office to lend a hand. With the extra support, they make rapid progress, and to everyone's immense relief, they complete everything on time. Yui even manages to catch the last train home, exhausted but victorious. The products are ready for launch, and against all odds, her summer plans are still intact. Walking the quiet streets towards her apartment, she suddenly feels a firm grip on her arm. Startled, she turns to find Masubu looking at her with concern written all over his face. He had been waiting for her, worried sick after receiving no replies to his messages. Seeing the exhaustion on her face, his worry melts into relief. He gently cups her face in his hand, brushing his thumb over her cheek, a silent but tender reminder that their trip is still happening. Yui smiles at him, leaning into his touch, feeling the weight of the night's stress fade away. The next morning, Shizuno enjoys a peaceful moment in her favorite cafe, sipping her drink at a slow pace. Keisuke arrives soon after, taking the seat in front of her. When she hears that he decided to skip the summer crowds and instead take his vacation in autumn, she realizes how similar they are. Without exchanging many words, they quietly enjoy their breakfast together, appreciating the unspoken understanding between them. Meanwhile, Masubu and Yui embark on their long-awaited trip. Their first stop is a traditional dessert shop that serves a limited-edition raindrop cake only available on weekends. Yui eagerly scoots up a spoonful, her eyes lighting up at the jiggly texture. The refreshing taste and smooth consistency bring a delighted grin to her face. Masubu watches her fondly, feeling a deep sense of happiness being on this trip with her. Even though they're in his hometown, everything feels fresh and exciting simply because he's experiencing it with Yui. Noticing a speck of soybean powder on his cheek, Yui leans in and gently dabs it off with a handkerchief. Just as she's about to pull away, a small child nearby catches them in the act. Yui confidently links her arm with his, playfully declaring that it's completely normal for couples to act this way. However, their casual moment of affection takes an unexpected turn when a local TV reporter approaches them. The reporter enthusiastically asks if they would like to be interviewed. Yui, despite her boldness moments ago, suddenly finds herself flustered. The idea of being on TV and publicly declaring their relationship overwhelms her. When the reporter persists, Yui panics and dashes away. As they make their way to their next destination, Masubu teases Yui about her unnecessary panic over the reporters. He informs her that the station is only a small local network, meaning no one from their workplace would have seen the interview even if they had stayed. Yui huffs in embarrassment, though her irritation is short-lived. Her mood instantly brightens when they arrive at a vast field of sunflowers, stretching as far as the eye can see. Excited, Yui dashes ahead, taking picture after picture to capture the golden scenery. Meanwhile, Masubu leisurely trails behind, enjoying a different view of his own. Masubu finds himself completely captivated by her. To him, nothing in the world could compare to this moment. Overcome with affection, he suddenly rushes up to her and steals a quick kiss, catching her off guard. As the day comes to an end, they finally check into a cozy hotel featuring a private bath. Yui immediately feels that the expense was well worth it, relishing the rare chance to unwind in such luxury. She begins to look forward to tomorrow's adventures, hoping she'll have enough energy to get up early and continue sightseeing. As they lounge together, Masubu suddenly grows uncharacteristically shy. He hands Yui a beer before hesitantly bringing up a memory from several years ago, during their company's training camp. He reminds her of the night when most of their coworkers had gotten drunk and passed out, leaving just the two of them to clean up the mess. He confesses that it was that night he fell helplessly in love with her. Yui stares at him, momentarily stunned. The sincerity in his voice and the way he gazes at her with nothing but adoration makes her heart race. Feeling bold, she scoots closer and presses a kiss to his lips, deepening the moment between them. The next morning, Yui is reluctant to leave the bed, clinging to Masubu and demanding more of his attention. Masubu willingly gives in to her whims, enjoying the intimacy brought in by their first vacation together. It isn't until room service arrives with breakfast that they finally decide to get up and start their day. Masubu takes Yui around the countryside, showing her all the must-visit sites and food spots. Yui excitedly buys more snacks than she probably should, struggling to decide what to bring home and what to keep for herself. As she browses around, her eyes land on a grape stand. Masubu visibly stiffens beside her, wondering if the stand belongs to his family, since they have a business growing and selling grapes. Yui buys some grapes anyway, eager to try them. They find a spot to sit, and as she pops one into her mouth, her eyes widen in pleasant surprise. The sweetness is far beyond what she expected, and when she tries the grapes at the top of the bunch, she notices that each one has a slightly different taste. Masubu proudly claims that the grapes grown by his family are even better. Yui hums in thought as she takes in the peaceful scenery before her. She suddenly finds herself wanting to visit this town again, not just for the sights and food, but to meet Masubu's family and taste their famous grapes firsthand. The next morning, Masubu and Yui wake up feeling refreshed, their bodies still tangled together beneath the sheets. With a few hours left before breakfast, they contemplate whether they have time for another intimate moment. Masugu, eager to show Yui how much he loves her again, leans in to kiss her, rolling on top of her. However, Yui declares that she would much rather enjoy another relaxing soak in the private hot spring before breakfast, since they will be making the trip back that day. Finally soaking in their last bath in their hotel, Yui closes her eyes, savoring the moment, wishing their vacation could last a little longer. Still, as much as she enjoys their peaceful getaway, she admits that the trip has left her feeling energized and ready to give her best at work once they return home. Masugu smiles at her thoughtful words, appreciating her hardworking nature. When she turns to him with bright, expectant eyes, waiting for him to share his own thoughts, he hesitates for a moment before admitting that he's been thinking about taking a higher certification exam. If he passes, it could help him rise through the ranks at work a little faster. Yui's eyes light up at his ambition, and a sudden idea sparks in her mind. She suggests that they set goals for the next year. If one of them fails to achieve their goal, they'll have to pay for their next trip to Yamanashi. Masugu starts to protest that his exam is incredibly difficult to pass, but when he sees the excitement on Yui's face, he finds himself agreeing to their wager, deciding to enjoy the moment and look forward to returning with her next year. When they return to the office, Masugu's coworkers immediately notice that he has a slight tan from his trip, but they don't press him for too many details. Maria, who had gone to Nagoya for her vacation, shares some snacks she brought back. To Masugu's surprise, Maria suddenly announces that she also has some treats for Yui, revealing an unexpected bond between them. His eyes widen in horror as he realizes that Yui, being her usual friendly self, will likely return the favor by giving Maria souvenirs from Yamanashi. His fears are confirmed when Maria returns to their department with her hands full of Yamanashi snacks. She tells Masugu that Yui had enthusiastically talked about her trip and even recommended places Maria should visit if she ever decides to go. As Masugu listens, his face grows warm, a light blush creeping onto his cheeks. Masugu feels a sense of pride after hearing how much Yui enjoyed their trip. He silently vows to continue making her happy by giving his best at work so they can enjoy more vacations together. One evening, Yui and Masugu sit side by side at the table, each immersed in their work. Both had set ambitious goals for the year, determined to see them through. Masugu is focused on studying for his certification exam, flipping through his notes and highlighting important text. Meanwhile, Yui is meticulously reviewing the data from her last product, fine-tuning her proposal for an upcoming presentation. The quiet hum of concentration fills their apartment, and the occasional sound of pages turning or Yui tapping away at her laptop takes up most of their conversation, while they both vow to achieve their goals. The next morning, Yui confidently presents her ideas for a new product to the section chief. She's nervous but hopeful. To her relief, her efforts are met with positive feedback. While there are several revisions needed, she takes pride in the progress she's making toward her goal. Encouraged by the response, she resolves to keep improving, knowing she's heading in the right direction. As she walks to get ready for a meeting, she overhears a few colleagues praising a newer staff member for a product that has been performing exceptionally well. A pang of doubt creeps into her heart. She can't help but feel a little discouraged, but rather than letting the thought consume her, she reminds herself that progress, no matter how small, is still progress. Yui and Itsuro head toward a meeting room for a discussion with someone from the new business development department. Yui is excited about the opportunity and eager to push her project forward. Itsuro, however, groans, muttering that he's not looking forward to the meeting since he doesn't mix well with Hiromi, the department's representative. Hiromi was once a star in the sales department, known for his sharp business instincts and no-nonsense approach. As soon as the meeting begins, Hiromi wastes no time getting down to business. He takes a quick look at the planning department's data and immediately calls it too complicated. With a firm voice, he lists several ways they need to improve their current system, instructing them to simplify their process. Yui watches in fascination. This is the first time she's working directly with Hiromi, and she can't help but be impressed by his efficiency. Itsuro, however, doesn't back down so easily. He attempts to counter Hiromi's suggestions, arguing that the planning department's process exists for a reason and leaves little to no errors. But Hiromi is unrelenting, pointing out inefficiencies and even deeming some procedures unnecessary. The conversation grows more heated until Itsuro suddenly excuses himself to take a call, leaving Yui alone with Hiromi. What happens next catches Yui completely off guard. Hiromi looks directly at her and offers her a position in the new business development department. Hiromi explains that his department is in dire need of fresh talent and that he's been keeping an eye on her work. Her last product proposal, despite being a small step in her current department, stood out to him. He believes that in the planning department, where so many employees are vying for recognition, it may take years for her contributions to truly shine. But in the new business development department, which is still in its early stages, she has the potential to make an immediate impact and get the recognition she deserves. Yui listens in stunned silence. She had no idea Hiromi even knew about her project, let alone thought highly of her skills. The weight of his words settles on her shoulders, and she realizes this isn't just a casual offer. It's an opportunity that could change the course of her career. The idea of switching departments is overwhelming, and she isn't sure how she feels about it yet. Unable to make a decision on the spot, she decides to take a detour after work. That evening, she meets up with Masubu at a department store where products from the new business development department are being sold. Masubu observes the bustling department store, surprised at how many customers fill the aisles even on a weeknight. Curious, he samples one of the company's products and finds himself genuinely impressed. He can't help but acknowledge that catching the attention of the new business development department is a significant achievement for Yui. Yuki, however, feels a wave of conflict as she takes a bite of the product herself. It is undeniably delicious and beautifully packaged, a level of quality that seems far beyond what she is used to working on. As they exit the store with a box of chocolates from their company, doubts overwhelm her. The possibility of transferring departments is tempting, offering her new challenges and greater recognition, but she worries about the implications of leaving her current role. Her original goal of making a name for herself in the planning department still holds meaning, and abandoning it now feels like a betrayal of her past efforts and her colleagues. Unfinished projects, pending proposals, and the inevitable office gossip weigh heavily on her mind. She also realizes that if she transfers, the bet she made with Masubu about launching a new product in the planning department will no longer be valid. The mounting concerns leave her flustered. Before she can spiral further, Masubu gently pinches her cheeks, breaking her train of thought. The sudden gesture catches her off guard, pulling her back to the present. He tells her to stop fretting and to think for herself instead of worrying about what others will think. A reassuring pat on the head follows before he signals that they should start moving again. Any further discussion will have to wait, as missing their train home is not an option. The quiet walk to the station does little to ease her troubled thoughts. The following morning, she does her best to maintain her usual energy during her presentation. She stays focused, but her mind keeps drifting back to the uncertainty surrounding her future. Chiharu notices the shift in her demeanor and expresses concern. However, Yui brushes it off, unwilling to voice the turmoil she is experiencing. As the day progresses, the weight of her responsibilities in the planning department becomes more evident. The workload remains demanding, and despite her desire to push forward with her proposal, she knows that more pressing tasks need attention. The realization dawns on her that transferring to a new department might provide her with the freedom to focus on projects she is passionate about. The next morning, an unexpected email from Hiromi appears in her inbox. He has sent an extensive collection of materials related to her project, filled with detailed analysis and valuable insights. Before she can fully absorb the information, a phone call interrupts her thoughts. A wave of panic sets in as she realizes she has forgotten to complete a task from the previous day. The oversight has resulted in a delay in one of the company's ongoing projects. She gets called to the section chief's office. After 6 years in the company, making such a basic error feels humiliating. Leaving her boss's office, Yui is met with the encouraging faces of her colleagues. Their support reassures her, but a lingering sense of doubt gnaws at her. She worries that her recent indecisiveness is causing her to make unnecessary mistakes, affecting not only her own progress but also the efficiency of her team. The thought weighs heavily on her mind, making it difficult to focus on anything else. That evening, she makes an unplanned visit to Masubu, seeking comfort in his presence. Overwhelmed by frustration from her mistakes at work, she pleads with him to help her forget the awful day. However, even after seeking solace in his embrace, her worries refuse to fade. The nagging thoughts that no matter where she goes, she fears she will carry the same uncertainties and struggles into a new department. Masubu, sensing her turmoil, playfully rubs her head. He tells her that so long as she is reflecting on her actions, then she is already on the right path. After calming down, Masubu walks Yui to her train station, despite telling her she can stay with him for the evening. She decides against it, knowing she has responsibilities to take care of before the next day. She apologizes for troubling him so late, but Masubu simply smiles, reminding her that she is always welcome to visit and vent whenever she needs to. The next morning, Yui unexpectedly crosses paths with Hiromi. Without hesitation, he asks if she has given any thought to transferring to the new business development department. He extends an invitation to join an upcoming seminar, believing it might give her the push she needs to make a decision. Before she can respond, he notices the proposal she is carrying and inquires about it. Yui admits that she had missed the deadline for submission and has no intention of pursuing it any further. Hiromi, however, disagrees. He insists that good ideas are invaluable to the company, regardless of timing, and urges her to submit it anyway. Still hesitant, Yui remains unconvinced. Seeing her reluctance, Hiromi decides to take a more direct approach. He calls her a coward. The remark stings, but it has the desired effect. Determined to prove him wrong, Yui gathers her courage and walks straight to her section chief's office. As she predicted, the section chief is skeptical. He knows she has yet to complete the revisions he previously requested, and with her current workload, taking on a new project seems impractical. However, for the first time, Yui stands her ground. She insists that she can refine the proposal along the way and that she is fully capable of spearheading the new project. Taking a deep breath, she finally admits what she's been too afraid to say. She would rather dedicate herself to this proposal than continue handling her existing responsibilities. The section chief studies her for a moment before responding. He acknowledges that Yui has always been reliable, which is why he has continuously assigned her multiple tasks. Until now, he had assumed she was satisfied with her workload. Realizing that she has other ambitions, he agrees to consider the proposal and even offers to adjust her responsibilities accordingly. With her eyes shining from a mixture of relief and excitement, Yui walks back to her desk. Shiharu, having observed the entire exchange, runs up to her and congratulates her. Reaching her desk, Yui takes a deep, calming breath. For the first time in a long while, she has stood up for herself. As the realization sinks in, she suspects that Hiromi has orchestrated the entire situation to push her into taking action. His challenge had forced her to confront her own doubts and make a firm decision. That evening, she rewards herself with a slice of cake from the new business development department's product line. The rich flavors melt in her mouth, and as she licks the frosting from her fingers, a renewed sense of determination fills her. The next day, Yui visits Hiromi to apologize for her previous behavior, acknowledging that she had been dismissive and hesitant when he had only been trying to help. She then formally declines his offer to transfer, explaining that she has decided to focus on launching another product within the planning department. However, she surprises him by requesting to join the seminar, eager to learn from his department's strategies and expertise. Yui openly admits that it was Hiromi's insights that helped her recognize the flaws in her approach to product development. His attention to detail and structured methodology are what make his department so successful, and she hopes to incorporate those principles into her own projects. Hiromi, taken aback by her honesty, raises an eyebrow. He is amused by her determination but makes it clear that he has no interest in a one-sided arrangement. If she plans to benefit from the knowledge of his department, then he too will make full use of whatever the planning department has to offer. By the end of a long and exhausting week, Yui and Masubu reward themselves with a visit to a stone spa. The warmth and relaxation seep into their tired muscles, and Masubu feels a sense of contentment watching Yui truly unwind. Her usual work-focused mindset fades away, replaced by an affectionate and playful demeanor. As she clings to him, resting her head against his side, Yui playfully argues that being near Masubu is the true healing she needs the most.